Look, we're going to have a chat with Nate now because you've got a very important conversation about what's going on up in Queensland, particularly in relation to the floods.
Yeah, well, you and I were both there, right? We saw the effects that Alfred had. I was recently in Logan while I was in Queensland. It's a city nestled just a little to the south of Brisbane, between there and the Gold Coast. It was hit hard by Cyclone Alfred. Residents from Logan were able to find emergency shelter immediately after the storm, but now looking into getting stable housing. Overstretched community service organisations are desperate for tonight's federal budget, hoping maybe it'll address some of the rising rates of homelessness across the country, but particularly in the southeast of Queensland. There's a big problem at the moment. Christopher John is the CEO of YFS Youth and Family Services, which is based in Logan in Queensland, and he joins us now from our Brisbane studio. Very good morning to you, Christopher. Thanks for joining us on Breakfast.
Good morning, Nate.
Alfred was really big, had a really big effect on your council area, on the city. Can you tell me about what it was that people were facing immediately in its aftermath?
Yeah, look, we've had, like a lot of places in Australia, a very big increase in the cost of affordable housing. And particularly in Logan, we've got a high population that actually have a very low fixed income. So we've seen quite a considerable bit of displacement of people who are finding themselves in really vulnerable situations, and unfortunately many finding themselves in sleeping rough in their cars or in parks or in overcrowded housing, and that's created a big pressure on our services in the local region.
How many people are you helping at the moment?
Look, we've got a number of different services that provide support. Our centre-based homelessness support, which is where people can come and get support on finding accommodation. We had a 31% increase from 6,000 calls in the previous year to 8,600 contacts in the last financial year. In our outreach service, where we actually go out and try and work with people who are sleeping rough in cars. 5 years ago in the census, we had 95 people sleeping rough. We've got a program at the moment that's tracking over 350 people in cars, in overcrowded accommodation, in emergency hotels and sleeping in parks. So it is a really big challenge for the work that we're doing in the local community.
How have those numbers risen? Can you maybe give me an example of some of these people that you're helping?
Yeah, well, look, I think, our median rental cost in Logan in the last 4 years has risen 57%. And when you've got a really large population that have, minimum wage and fixed incomes from, Centrelink, having a $200 increase in your rent makes it totally unaffordable. So we're having people that are coming in and we're working with them on their financials, and we're really finding it almost impossible for people to find an affordable accommodation on some of the incomes that they have. So that private rental market was a really important piece of, affordable accommodation in Logan, and we're just finding that tougher and tougher for them to find that, and that's pushing people out, and that's probably our biggest concern at this point in time.
And speaking about pushing people out, Alfred, I know, pushed some people from, I met a person at the evacuation centre who had been displaced from Bow Desert, which is about, an hour south from Logan. Yep. And now Brisbane's looking at moving their homeless people out of parks and similar. Got the Olympics being announced today, where that's going to be held. That's renowned for pushing people out of public parks and things like that. What effect is that all having on Logan?
Yeah, look, we are concerned. I think, and I fully understand for councils when they've got, people unfortunately sleeping rough, that it disturbs the amenity and the safety that people feel in their local communities, and they want parks to be able to places where families can go and enjoy the time. I think it's a real challenge, and when we look at the outreach that we do in Logan, we're finding that 70% of those that are sleeping rough in Logan had their previous address in Logan. So they are residents of these communities and councils. And if we find ourselves in a point where we're actually, wanting to evict our own residents from parks because they can't afford there, I find, that's a really challenging and it's a poor leadership decision when we should be really, wanting to focus on how we can get the supports and the appropriate accommodation for people and their needs. And when people have got pets and all of their belongings in the world, and they've been asked to go into accommodation for a temporary period of time, you can understand why some people go, well, actually, I want to keep trying to do what I can for myself rather than being, forced into a temporary accommodation. We can't fool ourselves. Hotel accommodation is not a long-term solution. It's absolutely what we've got at the moment, and we won't want people in parks, but we've got to get on to investing in the areas where we know the need is. And Logan is one of the fastest growing areas. It's the fastest growing council in Queensland, and we've got to be investing more in affordable housing and social housing, particularly in Logan, for those that are really really doing it extra tough.
Christopher, just briefly, what are you hoping for from the budget?
Yeah, so our national peak body, national shelter, is actually asking for the National Homelessness and Housing Plan to be released. We've had consultation on that, but we don't yet have a plan with the resources behind it to make sure that that goes in. So we want that out. That's going to certainly focus on what are the things we can do to address affordability, which we absolutely need right across the area. Our major concern at YFS and in the sector is for those that are rough sleeping. We know that when people are rough sleeping for longer periods of time, they have greater health needs, mental health needs, they have greater contact with hospitals, with police services, and unfortunately with corrections. All of those things actually cost the economy more than actually providing appropriate, safe housing with the appropriate supports around them. So we would like to see an investment into what we call supportive housing, which is accommodation with the appropriate supports to make sure that people can maintain their accommodation.
Christopher John, thank you so much for taking the time to join us on News Breakfast, and best of luck for what's going to be a difficult period ahead.
Thank you so much, Nate.
This is one of the things that Alfred brought to my attention in that region. There's such a big problem with homelessness across the country, but particularly in southeastern Queensland.
Yeah, for sure. Nate, thank you for that chat.